Well, no, that's very official. Okay, I guess we'll just dive into it. If anyone wants to move forward, you can. If you're happy where you are, you can stay where you are. There's drinks in the middle, the important stuff. So if anyone wants to top themselves up, you're welcome to. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to start off by you two introducing yourselves? Does that feel too official?
Okay, yeah, sure. That's why we're here. Hi, I'm Georgina. I'm the author of this book, 365 Ways to Save the Planet. I really appreciate anyone who was going to come last Thursday and has come today. I'm really sorry I was ill last week, but this is my third book. So I used to run a magazine called Pebble, which was all about sustainable living, and I ran that for 5 years. And through that, became really aware of lots of different issues in lots of different industries and also lots of different solutions. So this book is designed to give you an idea every day that you can try at home. Lots of them are free, lots of them are quite fun, quite quick, and it's all designed just to sort of chip away at your carbon footprint without you having to kind of make massive change all on like day one, and try and tackle some of the eco-anxiety that's out there about what we can do to sort of have less of an impact. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Okay, amazing. Lee?
My name's Lee. I have a couple of small restaurants in Margate that people like to label sustainable. Not necessarily me all the time, but yeah, 2 small restaurants, and we try to have as little impact on the environment as possible, which is not all as easy as you think, and it's it's difficult, but hopefully I can share my experience or knowledge this evening, see what happens.
I think that leads us really nicely into like the first question I wanted to ask, like what are some of the sustainability challenges for perhaps Thanet, or as we're all locals here, like what do you guys see as some of the challenges that we face here?
Go on, you first, go for it.
So one of the biggest ones I think at the moment is the water pollution. And if anyone's seen the sort of documentary that's on TV at the moment for White House, really brings it home. I mean, he's filming in Whitstable, just up the coast, about how much sewage is in the sea, and obviously that affects so much of our lives down here, whether you're swimming in the sea or walking a dog, or working with people that rely on fishing, for example.
Thanks to the oysters.
So I think that's one of the big things that being a coastal community, I think, has really brought home is the quality of the water and how much we're going in the wrong direction. It's not even we're progressing; we're actually going in the wrong direction with it.
I mean, I think that's completely right, and I think that's affecting. It's not just the seas; it's the farmlands around here. You're starting to see, they're doing the sewage there. You're seeing plastic being built into farmland now. You're seeing it ploughed in. You're seeing it have a really horrifying effect on some of the animal breeding and stuff around here. You're seeing just the complete degradation of our natural world that we rely on so heavily. Whether that be the sewage, whether it be the plastic, whether it be the chemicals that people are using on the produce. That's all over the world, but because I live and work in a really local way, hyper local way, I really notice this kind of issue in Thanet. Like this is Kent, this is the Garden of England, and it doesn't look like a garden anymore. I mean, partly it looks like a housing estate, and I see this, like I drive down even if I drive down a Thanet way, we drive to the farms every day to go and get stuff in an electric car, just so you know. But when we try to go get to the farms, you just sit, like you go down the motorways, whatever, and it's just strewn with plastic, and it just you're driving quite for a bit, and it's horrifying. It makes me feel like it makes me knot up inside when thinking about I can do nothing about. Well, maybe we can do a little bit about it, but
that's the structure. We can't take it all on our own,
no.
Is it? And I think it really. We're faced, we're a small 2 or 3 small towns surrounded by farmland and the sea, and yet we're sort of ringed by plastic and pollution. So yeah, I think it's quite in your face, whereas maybe in some other places you could sort of forget and push it out of your mind.
And what what can we do about it? Like what, because ultimately like the water problem's a huge issue. But Southern Water are doing so little about it and show so little care. I mean, they've previously been fined.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. What are your guys' thoughts on what we should be doing as individuals to help kind of better where we live and help try and either counteract some of this or what?
So I checked before I came out that just so I had the right statistic, but Southern Water, and this isn't all going to be about Southern Water, by the way, they dump between 16 billion and 21 billion kind of like one thing we can all do is make sure that the people we're voting in for councillors, for MPs, anyone in a position of authority has the environment at heart, is thinking about how they can change it, how they can improve things. That is something all of us can do. And I think really getting involved as a small community, as a small town on the edge of, the coastline, it is really important we get involved in things like local politics and councils, and obviously Thanet's not the easiest council to probably work with, but I think just trying to not say it's all on someone else or expecting like someone on a white horse to kind of ride in and save us, and being a bit more like, okay, how can we all get together and to make changes and make our displeasure known. I think what SOS Whitstable are doing is really interesting. They're sort of doing quite a lot of stunts to raise awareness, but I think the time has come to sort of make your voice known sort of in sort of local politics.
I think this is one of the things where that kind of pressure really, really does work. Like I mean, most of their dumping of raw sewage was legal. There's not, they're not actually breaking the law at this point. So, the only way you can do it is there should be no one who doesn't back this, really. Some people are still very quiet on it, but like this kind of placard waving, this kind of and noise making, it's the perfect example of when this works.
Yeah, it's a small town because it has a lot of impact. I'm also on the steering group for plastic-free Thanet, which is taken their key for the Surfers Against Sewage. So it's trying to bring a model in of, taking single-use plastic out of the towns in Thanet and becoming a plastic-free community. And again, it's trying to get people together and go, okay, what can we change on a local level that actually will have more of an impact than, lobbying people at a national level. And I think it's that we've all grown up perhaps a bit cynical, or like, oh, someone else will fix that, or I can't possibly get involved in that. And I think actually the planet needs us all now to kind of take it on ourselves.
Can I ask a difficult question? The kind of less fun side, I guess. Like, I guess my question is why should, I hope this isn't his fault. Why should we?
Oh, we get comfy.
Come on.
We as individuals, it sounds awful to say why should we bother, but when you look at what it is, when you look at all the stats around what's ruining the planet, and you look at like the number of like commercial fishing boats that are dumping fishing nets and God knows what, and you're looking at like the number of flights from where everything is like shipped to countries miles away, it can almost feel pointless, right? And then I'm putting my recycling in the recycling bin, like, yay, save the planet. And without those big companies doing anything, it does feel...
It's really annoying, right?
Yeah. Now, I guess, why... Is that going to make a difference if we all do that? Of course, if every person on the planet did, but you're never going to get that uptake. Even though we should all think that, as we all live here. But, what are your thoughts on kind of like...
Sure. I mean, I feel like that a lot of the time. Like when you're doing this stuff and like you it costs a lot. It's a lot more hard work, and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere. And then the week after, something you thought you'd fixed has then come back again. And you do all of this, and like it's. I kind of think like I've realised over time that after I've lived like this, like your book says, for quite a long time in my personal life. It's actually got worse since I've opened the restaurant, but the restaurant's good, but my personal life is terrible. But I've realised that really, really small changes make huge difference. And I think I only really see it when other people come back to you and kind of say, oh, I saw you doing that, or you see someone else take on one of your ideas. Like, to me, small is beautiful. Everything starts from this tiny little thing. You can't make these big, you know, there is people out there fighting for huge change, and that's really important. But on a small local level for you, your one little change, you putting that in recycling in there, it's not that that one bit of plastic is being saved and thing. It's that you're teaching someone else, your children, your friends who see it. You're teaching someone without even knowing it all of the time, and that's what gives you hope.
Well, like everyone is an influencer. It's become a really loaded word, but we all affect all of our friends, all of our family. No one lives in a vacuum. And I think there is that sort of peer pressure or like societal pressure as people change. But also, even if you only focus on your home or your street or your town or your village, whatever, it's your immediate vicinity. If we all did that, that would have a massive effect. You don't have to kind of look at it from a national level and go, oh, I've got to take everything on. But I do agree, like this book, you know, there's a big debate, especially in like amongst lots of sustainable theories, you know, that it's a lot of this change is being pushed on consumers and they're being unfairly blamed when actually, you know, most of the pollution is coming from like 100 companies and like the 1% flying around the world is causing a huge amount of damage. So why should we be picking up their slack? But yes, there's so much structural stuff that needs to change, and that still does need to change. It's not saying it's either or, but if we stand by and don't do anything, that's not helpful either. So it's kind of like we need both. We need the structural stuff, and then we need the things that we can control on a daily basis. Because, like Lee was saying, you know, there's a really nice phrase that Greta Thunberg uses as well, which is all about active hope. Like we get hope from actually changing our own behaviour and seeing someone else change their behaviour. Or so you need those things to kind of keep you going.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with like everything you've both said actually, but I guess
it's not fair. It's still not fair. It still doesn't right the wrongs of everybody else.
I'm kind of thinking like hope, active hope of any kind is good. Do you think we actually can save, on an individual level, save the planet at this point? I know nobody, you're not scientists.
Depends what side of bed I get out of.
I think it's going to be a very different place to what we're, you know, what we're living on in 100 years' time. It's going to be very different, and you know, whether that's saved or not, I don't know, but it's certainly not going to be as simple as it is now.
I think there's this idea that saving means almost like reversing time, and it's going to go back to like almost like the sunny uplands that we were promised in Brexit. That is a pile of shit. But
going back to those rose-tinted countrysides we used to have, like it's never going to happen again.
We're not going to end up in some 1950s bucolic picnic. But we do have to act now, soon, with urgency, if things are not going to get, you know, a million times worse. So I think the future, and I think that's what makes it so hard, because the future's really, no one's defined what that positive future's going to look like. We know what the awful doom future's going to look like, and that's really scary. But we've sort of had this like crisis of imagination around what it could be, and like what a sustainable town life world could look like.
And things evolve, you know, like what you think is the answer this year, you know, you change something, that might have
technology
you know,
leaps on.
That'll have problems down the road, and you'll find another solution. You know, if we replaced all plastic with cardboard now, we wouldn't have any trees, right? It's not a be all and end all solution. It's that, you know, things evolve. There is different ways of doing things. You will find different solutions. Like you said, there's no ultimate answer. We just know that we want our children, our children's children, our children's children to have something to, you know, live on.
Quite often, and that's one thing the book tries to get across, and that is difficult as well. Like when you try and solve one problem, like, or you know, we want to eat more organic food, but often organic food comes in single-use plastic, so you end up just swapping things for other issues. All these issues. So I think, you know, what people can do is decide the issues that relate to you and what you are passionate about or what you're really angry about, and focus on those rather than trying to fix the whole world. But the things that, you know, drive you, and they're going to be different. Like we don't have children, so we've got a slightly different angle on things, but someone else might not have a car, or someone else might decide they're never going to get on a plane. You know, we can all have a slightly different path.
Was that difficult when you were writing the book because what that kind of comes into my head when I think about all the different things that I do or can do or sometimes forget to do or whatever, I often find myself thinking, well, I need to recycle, but then actually half of this isn't recyclable, and then that's burning more, and then that's giving off. How did you decide with the book of like,
well, it gets
whether
even
it's worth doing or does that make sense? Because when you start to think about it, it gets really complex.
yeah, and the book's available in 25 different countries. So they also have completely different recycling systems or like different temperatures, and so I've tried to stick to things that are applicable. It's available in so many different countries. I'm not always able to go use this app or use this like name check something, and that's frustrating because I can tell you what the app is that would really help you, but I can't put it in the book.
Yeah.
So there are, yeah, it does make it challenging, but there's lots in the book around food. There's lots in the book around, fashion, things that are relatable and common to every single person, wherever they are.
Okay. And Lee, I'm really interested to hear a bit from you about how you guys, I know you mentioned in your introduction about how as a business you try to, not really paraphrasing, but like to do the best that you can. And can you talk me through what does that actually mean? Like, what do you guys do as a business?
I think, like when I said, people term us sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the first things I realised that if you want a sustainable restaurant, don't open a restaurant. There's nothing sustainable in a restaurant, quite frankly.
Don't do anything, basically.
Yeah, I do what I do to the best of our ability. But essentially, you don't need that restaurant. Like, the world is going to be fine without all of these kind of, quite frankly, middle-class restaurants that sell nice wine and sell, nice food. They don't need it. So what we're doing is we're doing something that kind of, supports people. We have as little... So I'd never term ourselves sustainable. It's always, we try to do our best. Because, like you said, something might be organic, but then it comes in plastic. That like those things never like go away. So we have a thing where it's like we try to be local, we try to be spray free, like or organic, and plastic free, and it has to kind of meet two of those to do it. And I think the biggest thing we've learned over. You don't always need these things. Sometimes you're trying to find a solution to something. It's like, okay, well, I just don't need it. I really want celery at this time of year. Well, I can't get it without plastic, without like, it's not local, it's not this time. Well, we just don't use it. It's the same. Like, I think that's what I've learned through not just the restaurants, but in general life is that it's consumption that is the problem. Don't get me wrong. I all want you to come into my restaurants and consume, but moderately. It's the consumption. It's the idea that you must have this to do this. This idea that that you have to fit this kind of life into this thing, and to do that you need this, you need this, you need this. Well, you don't most of the time. It can be a simple life. Like, we run a simple restaurant, and we try, like, that was the biggest thing, to remove lots of things. So that takes away an awful lot of things. But then the things we do need, so most of our stuff in the restaurants, we try to get in reusable containers. So we buy the containers, we go to the place, we fill it up, or they bring it to us, we reuse them. I mean, it's the simplest solution. Vegetables, they come in reusable containers. We pick them from the farm, they come in. But the problem is, sometimes onions, you order, like, we get some onions and they didn't have any, and so they come from the north of England and they're in a plastic sack. And it's like, oh, you think this would be dead easy, like, but it isn't. You speak to the farmers and they're like, no, we can't do that because it costs money, like, we can't make an exception. And I think one of the biggest things in the restaurant is that we always ask people, we always try to, convey our problems, see if we can find a solution. And even if we can't, we still check back on people over time. And it's amazing how over the last 5 years, what was impossible 5 years ago, that people were like, this cannot be done. We cannot give you this chocolate in a paper sack because it will ruin my product. Well, 5 years later, everyone's doing it now. not just, but and we played a small part of that, and that's what I mean by.
But that's scale of change, isn't it? That people coming together and making the system
And
different.
that's why you have to ask and you have to challenge. And it's not like, you don't kick up a fuss. It's like, how can I work with you? How can you do this? How can we, and then a year later we'd go back, say, look, you doing this yet? And they're like, no, we still don't think it's possible. Like, we're not going to do it. And then in a year, like another year later, they contact you and they say, we've changed our thing because someone from the TV said it was going to be really good and now we're doing it. Okay, fine. But whatever. But it's just those asking those little things, and that's going back to kind of recycling your piece of plastic. You do it because you can affect change. It starts off small. You've only got to ask a question, and it puts it in that supplier's head, or it puts it in that producer's head, puts it in my child's head. It puts it, I mean, that's why you do it. That's what gives you hope when you see these. Like for me, when the producers come back, go back to my chocolate man. He didn't want to do it, and now he's come back to me saying, "Will you take my product?" I mean, I found 3 other people now, but. Got them to change, but it's that it's working. You know that just going and asking
Well, also,
creates.
I think it's that like not assuming just because something's out of sight. Like, what is the process so it's coming to you, or and you can do that as a consumer. Like, what is the process of this whatever you've bought? How has it been made? How has it got to you? How has it been packaged? Where's it going to go when you've had enough of it? And asking those questions at either end, like outside of the experience that you have with that thing. And then trying to find people that fit into dealing with it properly or dealing with it environmentally, or like, you bring up, recycling is a really good one because everyone, tries to recycle, but no one really has a clue about what council do with their recycling once it goes off in a van. And no one asks a question.
If you did, you would be horrified, just so you know.
They burn it.
Loads of it,
They burn it. Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying how
They don't
little
do anything
the
with
people
it.
who are in this chain know what's happening to most of it.
Yeah. But enough people make a fuss about it and ask questions and expose it. And I'm not saying like, we all go on.
I'm going to be angry more about
Angry mob, but but we're all quite happy not to ask questions when things get a bit difficult, or like try and find a different system that we could work towards.
Well, this for me, right?
But it's tiring and time consuming.
It is, right? But that phrase that you just used raises for me what I think in my head is something I think about a lot, because I'm kind of fascinated by it. How much do you think people actually want to save the planet, and how much do you think people want to feel good about doing something that they feel that they should?
I think a lot of people want to save the planet. I think a lot of people want someone else to actually do it for them. I don't think anyone wants to sit there with the planet on fire around them. That's generally not our kind of MO.
A lot of people presume, as you said earlier, someone bigger than them will fix it.
Yeah.
Sometimes
and I think the scary thing is that's not going to happen. And the people we're probably relying on probably have even less incentive than you do to fix it. So we're the best that's going to get the people that care and the people that are already doing bit recycling or trying to eat, restaurants that do things in a great way. So it's that knowing there's not we've got to do it or whatever we can.
So what are like your top 5? So obviously the book has 365 ways. What are some of your what are your favourites?
Do you want me to read out number 1 to 5?
Yeah, test me.
Are they in order of here's my faves to my least faves, or
that'd be a bit sad at the end though, wouldn't it? I think it does end on a Christmas one, but pretty much that is the only order because the publishers just muddled them all up, which was what they wanted to do. No, they're not in any order. I have tried, because it was written in the middle of last year, and I'm very conscious that there's a cost of living crisis. Lots of people don't have lots of money to go and buy, and I don't want you to go and buy new sustainable versions of things you already have anyway. Lots of them are about saving money as well, because I really like this idea that being sustainable doesn't have to cost you more money. In fact, it often saves you money, and it's that kind of like being good for the planet is good for you. It's good for your wallet as well. So there's lots of sort of like reusing hacks and lots of food saving, food ideas, lots of fashion stuff, because again, clothes is something that we all have in common. We don't really walk around naked, so everyone needs clothes. And often it's got easier and easier to find secondhand clothes now as well, and do all the rentals and mending that our grandparents sort of did, and we're going back to. So yeah, I don't really have I can pick some out. Like I've had a blank brain.
I'll shout a number. You read
Right,
it.
okay, you pick a number.
God, how should we actually do that?
1 to 365.
212. Do you know what it is?
She hasn't read the book. Say goodbye to business cards.
God, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't said goodbye to them, say bye to them now.
If you've got business cards. It's funny. I thought they died out years ago. Someone asked me the other week, "Have you got your business card?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah, and every one comes with like an impact index, so you can see what you're saving, and like as you go through the book, you can kind of be like, oh, so you can it brings it back to like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. To go back to your point of like, what's the difference? So that's kind of like, yeah.
I'm really intrigued what number 179 is though. I wish I had checked earlier.
Yeah.
Turn your socks inside out.
Wow.
Have you missed that one, is it?
No, it's something about odd socks. I do like an odd sock. It's actually rethinking your pet's toys, because we're all dog and cat owners now. They're all made with really cheap PVC plastic.
Yeah.
They're all made in China, and that plastic does not go anywhere once your dog's destroyed that toy for 30 seconds.
Cat litter and cat food, and I've got 2 cats.
We've got one dog. So yeah.
I've struggled with this for years. Like now, there's many more examples. But how old are my cats? 4 years old, 5 years old. When we first do it, trying to get cat litter that didn't have like the stuff in it that's bad. I can't remember.
Yeah, toxic chemicals.
Or like food, pet food that was in like either metal or paper was just impossible to get. I mean, everything is in these plastic pouches. And it was really, really difficult just to get old-fashioned tinned food.
And cats as well need to eat meat. You can't, because a lot of people, some people want to get more dogs onto like vegan diets and insect protein diets, but cats have to eat meat. You can't move away from that.
I didn't know that. Do they? I did not know that. I don't have a cat.
You probably are speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, our dog turns its nose up at anything that isn't meat. Show her a vegetable, not interested. So we've tried.
She finds on the floor on a walk.
Well, yeah, that's
like, but
a chip.
Okay, one thing that floated past Lee that like through my head is we're really overfishing at the moment, right? Like you don't like that one. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I struggle with it all the time. Don't want to go.
Obviously, you've got a fish restaurant. Why? What?
Sometimes I wish I didn't have a fish restaurant. I'll be honest with you. Like my daily diet is mostly vegetables. Very occasionally a piece of fish or a piece of meat. Like that's reduce everything, mainly vegetables. Now, the fish we use is not from trawlers. We only use day boats. So it is a local community, an old-fashioned way of feeding people that is dying out, unfortunately, already. But all of it, every single bit of our fish, we can trace back to the boat it came from. I can tell you who caught it if I text him in the morning. Like I literally know where it comes from. So I think I'm supporting a local community that is, sustainability isn't just about the headline kind of, you must save this, do this. It's about people as well. And it's important that we eat the right way, not just, I want everyone to come and eat in my restaurant, but I don't want everyone to come and eat in my restaurant every single day. That would be over the top. Like, this should be a treat and a luxury. And I think it's okay to support a small, non-thriving industry that is important to feed people, because fish is an important part of our diet.
But it goes back to that overconsumption thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people, when all the planes stopped with COVID, everyone was like, well, that's it, travel's over. Travel's a really damaging industry for the environment, and it is, plane travel is. But if you take travel away, which and tourism away, completely destroyed economies that in the developing world that relied on that tourism, and those people relied on that money coming in, those jobs.
It would stop the sharing of knowledge. It would you can't
stop everything.
It's not a simple answer, right? Because
Yeah.
I often feel this when we talk about fast fashion and not buying as many clothes. I do often then think of the people that work in these factories, and I would much rather that they had better jobs and were paid better and had safer working environment. But equally, I would hate for their job to just be ripped from under them because a bunch of people elsewhere have decided, and that's not me advocating for fast fashion, but just being aware that actually it's more problematic than that because people are involved and tied up in all of these things as well.
That's it, and it's easy to think like this, the three P's: people, planet, profit. But it's easy to forget about the people bit, and it is those we want to look after the environment. We have to do a lot more to look after the environment, but we all need to be able to live properly because we can't help the climate. We can't put our energy into reversing climate change when we're struggling to eat or we're struggling to make money, or it's that sort of hierarchy of need, isn't it? We need people to earn a decent amount of money for them to be able to give their time and energy into helping the planet.
And that does, I guess that's the other thing. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm being really negative about this, but obviously the planet is dying, and I feel that we have to take it seriously. Like, if I just ask hard questions,
No, it's good. I think it's good.
Yes, I'm fine with it. Yeah. I'm waiting for the really hard ones.
No, but I mean, sustainability.
It's a tricky issue.
Is very middle class. It's a very white middle class problem. Not problem. It's everybody's problem. But I mean, it's a very middle class thing to be talking about, to be telling others to. And I guess, how do we work with that when not everybody can afford? Like, some people have to buy fast fashion because that's the only option that they have. Or the only option that they're aware that they have. Lee's raising his eyebrows at me. What do you want to say?
No. I mean, fashion is not my area of expertise, but it's like you don't need fast fashion. You don't need fast food. Like, I don't have a solution for removing it other than, consumer pressure. Because it's very hard for, it's essentially well-off people, well-off countries dictating, to other people, poorer countries, that they should or shouldn't do this. This country has been through its industrial revolution. It's made its mistakes. It's done all its polluting. It's earned its money. And to then turn around and say you can't go through those same mistakes is very difficult. The same with whether you do that with people, whether you do that with companies, whether you do, it's very difficult. I don't have a solution for any of this.
I think as well, it's trying to share knowledge in a way that isn't top down, telling people what to do. But going back to the fast fashion thing, secondhand fashion, which is becoming so much more easier and democratic to buy, and from Vinted and Depop to Facebook, whatever you want to do it on, is often cheaper or as cheap as fast fashion. It scratches a different itch. Mending and making, sharing, renting, swapping, all of those things are becoming almost as easy as buying fast fashion. But we're almost we've become hardwired for this dopamine hit of buy new. And I talk about this in my last book, but we've become confused with the different values of what cheap and value mean. So we put loads of emphasis on that something being cheap means it's good, whereas really something should be good value, and that's a different thing from being just cheap. Whereas a lot of the fast fashion stuff, it's this is a brilliant dress that's £3, and nothing that you can wear should be £3.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
is it
spend that £3 on something that already exists, or spend it on Facebook buying something secondhand. I think just buying more and more stuff can be changed.
Definitely, and I do agree, but I do think that we have a habit of making presumptions without necessarily being in the situations. No, we don't need fast food and we don't need more clothes, but then I'm not a mum. I'm not, for example, a single mum reliant on a very small wage, and having to think, oh my god, the kids broke their coat again, the zip's broken, and having to run, or we have to acknowledge that it is more expensive to buy organic food. As an adult, that's easier, I think, to make that decision and be actually, I would rather I'd rather eat more basic meals but I think it's totally different once you pull like kids.
I think
into
with
the
kids,
mix
when
and
it
things like
gets, when, yeah, then you've got kids, when you're time poor, when you're stressed, all of those decisions become, even if you've got money, become just harder anyway. But I think it goes back to like working out, even if there's one area in your life that you can change, if it's not fast fashion because you need to buy lots more kids' clothes and things like that, then what else could you look at that you could tweak and change that just to bring your sort of carbon footprint down a bit? Like, I totally agree. Like, not everyone can change everything, and some people can't change anything. But then the people that can, perhaps should do a bit more because they can.
that's what I was interested in, I guess. Whether your thoughts, do you think, because it is
I
quite
don't think
a
we
fastest
should.
thing, should we be pulling more weight, you know, like,
I think
because
if we
you can do more.
Yeah, I do. And I think that we can't point fingers and expect everyone to make the same changes at the same rate and have the same experience, because we don't need to compare each other. It's not a competition. It's and you see it on Instagram as well. Like, people are sort of like, oh, I've got my trash in a jar this size and that's everything I've done in a year. And you're like, well, I can't do that, so I'm just failing now. So I don't think it should be this kind of competitive sport. I think it should be do what you can in your life. See it?
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, as long as he's
Oh, he just drove straight into it. Yeah.
I just thought.
Yeah, he's doing his bit for the planet somehow. I don't know. It's an electric scooter.
Yeah, I must say, in your book, to be fair, like, there's a whole mix of things, right? Like, some of these questions make it sound like you're not aware of those things. I know that you are. I just think it's interesting to discuss, and I know.
And it's really hard. Like, we have to acknowledge that we're all white middle class audience sitting in an independent bookshop. We've all got the luxury of being here. It's really difficult to get out of, to put yourself in, to know exactly what we should be doing if we're not that person. But I think having a lot of more understanding and empathy has got to be part of it. Yeah, and there's lots of free things in the book so I'm really trying to conscious, like, to keep it so everyone can find some stuff they can do, no matter what, you know, experience they've got or setup they've got.
I think it was interesting. Like, I remember Rise Up Clean Up went around Margate, and they went around to some of the, like, they went to all the shops and they were talking about the plastic that's on the beach and you know, you can replace this with cardboard. Some people don't even realise this is a thing. This, you know, this idea that we're polluting the planet is, to a lot of people, like, they would talk to some of the, you know, the kebab shop. I remember one of them was with a kebab shop on the seafront. There was the ice cream place. He's like, I don't even know what this is you're talking about. Like, this is nothing. Like, it's, you know, it's completely passed some people by. There is more important things in their sphere to do than just worry about this thing. We're in a time privileged kind of arena where we've got the time to worry about these things. And it's more important than ever that we do these things because we have the ability to do it.
That's it. I think do it to whatever you can do, doing it to according to your ability.
And not to worry that you can't do everything. I think it's really important to realise that. I realised this quite quickly. Like, when we first started the restaurant, everything had to be perfect. There had to be no plastic. It was like we were going to be completely plastic free. Well, that went out the door in about a month. But, like, you cannot do everything. All you can do is do what you can do, and not just do your best with the kind of like, oh, well, I did my best. It's like, try really hard to do it, to try and make a difference, to express why you're doing something, to, you know, to show other people without pushing it down people's throats because no one wants to hear it, that you can, you know, this is how you do it, and that it's okay, that this is possible, that, you know, me as a business can show people that we can survive, we can pay people well, we can run a business like this, and it works. That it's a viable, for me, that it's a viable business opportunity, that we can act like this, we can spend more money on things, we can pay people better wages, and it works as a business. Like, this isn't a charity that I run, it isn't not yet anyway. You know, it's a viable thing that can actually function in this society that we live in, that it's really important that it works.
It was interesting you said you don't like the word sustainability, and when I set up Pebble about 5 years ago, I really I made this big thing about hating the word sustainability because it feels like you've got to be perfect and you've got to live this life that just A, doesn't exist, and B, couldn't exist because you wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't turn your lights on, you wouldn't leave your house, you wouldn't eat at nice restaurants. And it's amazing how many people at talks come up to me or send me DMs or something being like, oh, I'm not very sustainable. But then they'll list off a load of things that they're doing. And you're like, but that's more than I do. You know, like it's, you don't have to call yourself sustainable. You don't have to, you know, make it a big thing or think, oh, I'm going to be an eco person or.
I think it's a badly chosen word. It's been a long while since I've looked it up in the dictionary, but doesn't it mean that you can carry on doing something without any effect?
Just keep going.
Yeah, and it's all, and that's not true. Like I said, if you don't want to, you know, if you don't want any footprint on the environment in a restaurant, don't open a restaurant. It's as simple as that. Like, you can't carry on doing something. But what you can do is be aware and be thoughtful and be, you know, concerned with what you're doing, whether that be the people you work with, whether that be what you're buying, doing, what you're doing at home, all of those things. Just have a bit of thought about it and try to do as much as you can.
I'm kind of interested to open this up to kind of anyone in here that wants to get involved, because I'm intrigued on everybody else's thoughts, whether any of you guys have specific questions for Georgina or Lee, or whether you've just got something to add on kind of any of the points raised or anything that we haven't raised. No pressure, but go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting in your views about our local MP who happens to be a climate change denier. And given what you've discovered, and it's interesting, and I do appreciate what you say about all the small things add up and make a difference, which they presumably do. But it is actually the major things, it's the macro things.
Both are really important.
We live in a consumerist society that basically wants a new phone every 2 or 3 months, new clothes every 2 weeks, and wants vegetables from all over the world on demand whenever they want it. And then we have an MP who basically says there is no problem with climate change, so we'll continue as we are. How on earth can you frame what you're doing if a macro issue is like that?
I'm counting down the days to the general election.
Can you, do you, I mean,
it's really,
this is all very good, as you said, this is white, middle class, sitting evening. Shouldn't we be camping outside of Craig McKinley's office?
Yes.
We wouldn't be doing far more good if we were doing that rather than sitting here discussing it.
I think we can do all of it. I don't mean like take on the whole thing yourself, but I think there's lots of different ways we can do it. And I think there is a serious problem in this country with leadership and the realization of how important actually getting to net zero or just moving forward in an environmental way is. And I think they've really underestimated how strongly people feel about it and how many people feel that. It's not just people who are gluing themselves to the M25. I think there's so much potential in Thanet for it to be a really, you know, pioneering part of the world. We've got so many incredible ecosystems on our doorsteps, you know, incredible passion and expertise in the area. And I think we are not well served politically by that. So I think, you know, canvassing, campaigning and choosing people that throwing our weight behind people when it's the right time that are going to champion the environment is really important. You know, I've never canvassed for anyone or got involved in a general election before, but I think this one is that's going to be coming up is super important.
Sorry, just to finish, you see, politics doesn't seem to be interesting anymore, you know, in the sense of when people talk about politics, it's that kind of thing, or politics based.
I think if people don't see it changing,
politics should be really important. You know,
it is really important.
You know, how can you have a Green Party which is separate from the major political parties? Yeah. And probably the most sensible politician leads the Green Party, or did do.
And I think people are despondent and then become what's the word when you apathetic, because we don't see that change happening and we don't hear those voices represented in Parliament. So people disengage, and I think that is a really big problem.
I think this is why you're seeing more of this kind of thing, though, because people become like apathetic about politics. You're seeing more kind of small-scale change, which is actually, you know, the more it becomes joined up, is actually becoming huge change. You know, this is no, like, this stuff you're talking about in your book is no longer, this is mainstream stuff. Like, no offense, but I would say a third of these people are probably already doing, lots of people are already doing, you know, like this is a result of politics not being engaged in these kind of things, is that people do take it on themselves and that there are answers out there. And this, going back to this kind of the small is beautiful. You'll see these changes. Like, I am almost certain our local MP will not be in charge, like an MP, like in the next general election. But because there's so much kind of,
I mean, go back to the example that you put about Rise Up Cleanup, who are doing incredible work, but they're basically doing the job of the council. They're cleaning the beaches. Like, that shouldn't, we shouldn't need to have them, but thank goodness we do have them. But
do you think though, because I sometimes wonder this, where this might be taken on a tangent, but I think it's kind of related. When charities step in, it's so good that they do what they do, but you see the same thing with like food banks and things like that, is that these charities have stepped in
and then it's the new normal.
Relieved the government of having to bother to do what they should be doing. And I wonder, you kind of think, oh, thank goodness they are, but then I also think, why would the government change anything when people are doing it for them?
And that goes back to putting pressure on locally.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was I think last year there was a call out for local councillors in Margate. It goes back to like actually understanding our local political system, our local planning systems, how our towns are run, and it's something that isn't big or sexy, but it's really important. And that's, we're not
Surely it should be the most sexy thing.
town planning.
It's a marketing
Yeah. But often we're not taught about it. We don't understand it, and anything we don't understand, those systems we don't understand, we tend to just be like, oh, don't we know how that works?
I think that definitely puts people off, right? Like I know when I was growing up, I did feel passionate about, I felt that things were wrong on like a political scale, but I felt outside of the kind of people, I didn't know enough. Like, I didn't have a good enough understanding of like the history of politics, and I didn't fully know enough to get involved. So I guess, yeah, we need to be encouraging people to.
I think the more people that don't know the history of politics that get involved, the better. Actually, the more normal people, rather than career
views.
like this idea that you study politics and then become a politician with no real, experience of life.
I mean,
is
the whole going off on a tangent, but the fact that you don't have that there aren't everyday politicians is just crazy. That we can have so many people in power who have all been like privately educated and all come from this one particular kind of background.
And it's not actually an attractive proposition for a lot of people. Like I'd always wanted to be an MP at some point, and I don't think I will do anymore because it's so angry and so like death threaty. Very hard to put it. Like,
that's not a phrase that's going to take off quickly in the newspapers. Death threaty, but okay.
But you see all these female MPs sort of having to deal with incredible amounts of like social trolling and things. And you go, I don't even want to like put a toe in that world. So I think we have to, I don't know, either be braver or sort of tackle it at a lower level and going back to that town council sort of level. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Can I talk about clothing?
Yeah,
Go
for it.
because I'm really interested, because that was my industry for 35, 40 years, and I'm retired now. And I was very at the forefront of vintage fashion in the 80s. So, and obviously fashion leads these things. But the point I wanted to make was, I find it fascinating when people talk about fast fashion and we mustn't go to Primark and stuff like that. Because I was in manufacturing, I actually know that how Primark gets their product out so cheaply, and it's not as unethical as a more premium brand. They just model it in a different way. Mm-hmm. We've had conversations about this before. So one of the things that struck me was, and because of my age, is we just wore a lot less. I just remember when I was 20, I would buy one dress, and it represented literally 3 Saturdays of labour. So that would have been when things were manufactured in the UK and all of the changes. Because I also traded through all the changes when the manufacturing from China came in and prices changed. I saw how people changed their purchasing behaviour, and the thing is, I have to really check myself, because before I preach to my children, when I was 20, I had one dress and I wore it, for a whole year and everything. It's actually, had I had the choice and the availability at the price, so therefore if I worked one Saturday, I'm talking when you have a Saturday job. When I worked one Saturday, I actually could have bought 3 dresses and a pair of shoes for that, rather than 3 Saturdays bought me 1 pair of trousers. At that age, I probably would have had the 3 pair of shoes for whatever, the more volume. So therefore, you have this kind of, it's sort of unfortunately going to be fashion-led, because otherwise it becomes very hair-shirt.
Yeah,
You know,
and it
that
goes
kind
back
of
to that.
self-flagellating, like, you're 21, you have bought 5 dresses this year. This is a bad thing. Because actually, I mean, and also, sorry, I'm digressing, but we talk about this middle class thing. If you're in a lower income, you're consuming less automatically because you buy less, you know. So therefore, you can go to Primark and you can buy the cheap dress, and you're like, oh, you're the devil. But actually, that dress will pop up and pop up. And obviously, when you're of a certain age, I go in my wardrobe and there are those special things, and they're 30 years old and 25 years old. So in some ways, kind of banging on about consumption, I think it's already happening. I think it's already happening. And the biggest thing I noticed, just as a thing at the very end of when I stopped, so probably when I stopped at the shops, which had been about 13 years ago, was people just could not buy anymore because they didn't have the space in their homes to store it. And so what's actually happened is now the cost of space is so much greater than it was 40 years ago when I was younger. Years ago, we could afford to rent a flat with loads of space. We couldn't afford to put anything in the cupboard, so we have 3 things. Now you have the opposite thing. You can't afford a cupboard bigger than that, but you have this many things to put in it. So in some ways,
do you think it's
kind of
natural?
how things
Do you think
is,
it's naturally shifting to?
Some things just shift, yeah. And I think it's very, very, it's good. It's conscious. I mean, I have just come back from somewhere very exotic, and I had signs on the island, no plastic bottles on this island. And I'm like going, yes. But this was a slightly premium place. And I really wish, why Evian and what have you still haven't got their dispensers in every shop with the recyclable bottles where you go buy your half. They won't lose the money, you just put your pound in.
Transporting water from one place to another is one of the most ridiculous things
The
you would
whole
ever.
water thing,
But it
I mean,
goes
that's
back
all I
to
wanted
that.
to say, really.
It goes back to also that consumer versus like system thing. Was like, it's really
Easy to blame people, going, "Why have you bought all these clothes?"
There's too much blame. And stuff.
Whereas, you know, yeah,
Blame someone. You can't blame whether it be a country, whether it be a person. It should never be like that.
that's
I
it.
mean, I feel very passionate about it because I saw the death of textile recycling in this country probably in the early 90s, and the factories closed. I was in the middle of it, and you would not believe how much of our clothing was recycled and remade into things, and the whole industry went, and a lot of the industry went because of the addition of elastane in clothing, of Lycra is the brand name, but elastane in clothing, which renders it all unrecyclable. So, and I saw it and lived through it and didn't even notice it, and it's only now I'm older I look back and go, oh, I remember that happening. So
I think I don't think it's different now, but definitely before COVID, it was fast fashion was producing 11 pieces of clothing for every single person on the planet every year.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And there's not 9 billion people on the planet.
But I do have a stat. Consumption overall of clothing globally has gone down 20%. And I'm not quite sure how it's distributed, because I would have said in some countries it's not the same. But the actual overall production of clothing has dropped significantly in the last 8 years. So I wish I could give you the wrong. I'm sure it's Googleable. It might not be right, but I know consumption is actually dropping. It just takes time.
That's it. These things don't sadly happen overnight.
Do we think the problem is just because do we think the problem is just overpopulation? Just to go off of what you've said about consumption being down and how many
about the space. I think we have the same amount of space now. We're just sharing with more people.
Yes.
So it's not that not that I'm putting less thing in a smaller space. I mean, we're 3 people putting the same amount of things, but we're sharing less space.
I mean, I don't say that with an answer. I don't know.
I think the population is a difficult one because lots of countries' population is actually dropping. We aren't. It isn't going up as quickly as it was, and it was. You know, we were going to run out of room, and it was all going to be a disaster. And I don't think it's going to quite go that way. But I think the problem is overconsumption. We are all consuming way more than we used to. Whether that's clothes, whether that's food, whether that's plastic covered stuff, houses. We just have more things, and we've been sold to. It's not like we all woke up and decided we all randomly wanted more staff. We've been aggressively marketed to since we were children, you know, and it's not at fault.
No, I think it's this constant drive for growth that just can't, like this constant idea that you've got to grow, this constant idea that you've got to make more money, you've got to, you know, to sort like it's
Bigger
this
houses,
idea.
bigger.
Yeah, I've got to live up to this certain thing. It's like, you know, all you hear from the like budget yesterday is like, this will drive growth, this will drive this, so we can get back to like consuming more and doing what was all wonderful in the night. It's like this is right. This is the whole.
Yeah.
What happened to talking about happiness? What's happened to talking about, you know, being? Yeah, absolutely.
I think that seems to be at the crux of a lot of what we've said is that we are taught to work more, to earn more, to want more, to never be happy.
Success is money, and like, you know, we talk about success at school, being good at school, being good at, like, this isn't, you know, it's all the wrong things. It's all this idea
We're
that's
talking about happiness. We're never talking about the
But like every
the
company,
quality of your relationships, or
you know, every company is only judged on how much profit it can make for its shareholders, and there's never enough profit. It's just going more profit, and if you're not making more, then you're failing, and like that way madness lies, and we've all sort of bought in, and it's that is at the crux of everything. You had a question. Sorry.
Yeah, it's sort of an invitation, slightly risky invitation. But I'm in Extinction Rebellion, and on the 21st of April, we are having a protest outside Parliament for 4 or 5 days. The focus is not on arrests, it's on numbers, and we really need as many people as possible to join us from all groups. So you don't have to engage any civil resistance or civil disobedience. We just need people to stand with us. So yeah, it's really an invitation. It's 21st of April, and if you can.
Thank you. Where will you be? Like just outside
We're
Parliament?
going to surround Parliament, yeah. So there'll be people camping there for days, but you can just come for one day and stand with us. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm in London that day anyway.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask about? I'm not a parent, but I do wonder. You know, saying that some of the topics are mainstream or whatever, but that's for us. Like, how are kids? You know, how the next generation? How's everybody kind of like at school? What's the focus? Are people talking about? Is the next generation going to be coming up, going like, right, this. We're doing this all the time as standard. You know, the education is there, and kids are like, we've got to sort this out. We're terrified. Oh, obviously, they want children not to be scared, but do you know what I mean? Do people feel like their children are receiving information in their education?
Personally, I mean, I'm not.
My kids are 12, and they talk about this stuff at school a lot. I'm surprised how much they talk about this. Actually, it's a lot. Their projects are set. I mean, as much as I remember when I was a kid doing things about not dropping litter in the street, you know, doing posters for that, they're doing that, you know, that I don't think that's ever changed actually. But I think they are much more aware of these topics. I think the teachers are much more concerned with these things, like whether it's on the curriculum or not, that, you know, these little projects do come up all of the time, and it is something they talk about as much as social issues, as much as it's not perfect, but, you know, my kids just, I don't force stuff down my kids. I kind of just, that's how we do it. And so, you know, when we go to a shop with one of their friends or whatever, and they ask for a bag, and my kids will be like, why? Just carry it. Like, those are the things about it.
Normal,
Like, it becomes normal. Like, and I think, you know, it's terrifying what we're going to leave them, but I think, you know, it is mainstream. This is going to be, you know, everyday life for them. You know, they are going to be aware of plastic. You know, they are going to be aware of this stuff. They are going to be aware that certain things have a severe detriment. You know, you can't not. There's just more people. You know,
Because that's what I mean. It's like, so the children now are future politicians. Is that going to be, you know, the thing that is a real? They're so used to growing up with it, but
I think the Gen Z lot are actually really interesting because they do have sort of a lot more fire in their belly. They seem to, and they want to take it on. And I think there is a lot of anger there that it's you know, it's going to be their mess that's passed down. And I think there's some really and also there, you know, there's so much sharing in a way that just wasn't possible 20 years ago. You know, the whole sort of TikTok Instagram viral stuff just puts everyone kind of on the same page at the same time in a way that's never been possible before. And I think
that as they get older, I think that's going to be really interesting, like how they use that, because they're so that's a viral video native kind of,
in a way that we're not. But yeah, I hope they keep that fire up.
I think, I agree with you, and I really like that generation. I think the answer is like, yes, the younger generations are going to grow up with that fire in their belly, but I just personally don't feel that's going to be because of school or curriculums. I think they're really outdated, and it depends, of course, on the school and where you are, but I think it's more to do with the children themselves and the access they have to all these different ideas and the conversations that the younger generations are having, as opposed to like schools, personally.
Yeah, I think you need it to become mainstream amongst our generation for it to become even more mainstream amongst them. You almost want them to grow up. It becomes natural. It becomes second nature to think of nature.
But it would be nice if they had.
It would be nice if they. It's a good phrase. I like it. If they had politicians or a structure they could look up to and go, oh, that's been really positive. That's made change. Look what they've achieved. Like when I was at school, they
happened in 300-400 years. Like I just can't see. Like I just can't see politics being the answer, unfortunately. I mean, hopefully there's better, whatever we think of politics, like, whatever party you vote for, whatever, it's really important you just vote. But I don't think that's ever going to be the answer. I think this kind of like, it becoming natural and this fire in your belly to kind of change something is the most important thing, because it's not going to be, I think growing up with the realization that no one's going to help you anymore, like it isn't there, like.
And it is messy. It goes back to like, we're never going to, whatever system we're in, it's never going to stop and something new just start the next day. We can't reset it. So I think whatever change come, it is going to be not all linear and not sort of, again, we're expecting something to just almost like the board to reset, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. We just kind of muddle through it and get it better each time.
Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to end before we kind of go a bit more informal and sort of finish the panel? But I encourage everyone to have chat. Yeah.
Can I just ask you, with your book, you said it was in 25 languages or 25 countries?
It's in about 6 languages, I think. It's in about 25 countries.
Did you, well, excuse the question, but did you have a publisher for the book?
Yeah, so the publisher is Dorian Kindersley, who's part of Penguin, and I think I know what's coming. So on the first book, it was all printed locally. So each country printed it, and we printed it on. We did a big study on like the most environmentally friendly paper. There was no colour on it. It was all black and white. It was as eco as we could get it. And then this one, unfortunately, they decided there was budget cuts, so they went back to doing it in China, where they print all their other books. So that was really frustrating, and it's not something I pushed on it. It's not something I could.
But it delivers the message.
It delivers the
At the
message.
end, that's kind of the most important thing. If that's the only way to deliver the message volume, it's kind of like a.
But
famously,
I will put money on it that you're not the only person that's asked for it to be printed locally and done by white. And that message, just talking to them and asking that, even though they've said no, and you're still like, okay, well, it's fine.
Yeah.
You ask them, people
the
will remember.
first one
And it
was, so
will.
we know it's possible, and then they went, the price is too high, so we've gone back to this way, because paper stocks have gone up 50% in the last 2 years, like everything else. But it's the same when you were talking about having a restaurant. It's the same as having a book. Do I need to write books? Well, I would say yes, but do we need more books? Probably not. But you need.
Actually, I don't think that. I actually don't think that's true. I think people don't need books. I think people do need more
Make
books.
everyone happy.
And many other things aside, like
The other thing I was going to say, like, I think a business card is quite useful. However, I agree with what you've said in 212.212. I do agree, but I haven't read your book yet.
That's okay.
Did you suggest an alternative to the business? Well, could you just enlarge on that a little bit?
Yeah, so actually just swapping business cards, and you can have an app now that swaps QR codes with people, and it will swap your data.
Okay.
Phone to phone. So it's sort of a digital version.
you could just write someone's phone number down on a piece of paper, like the old,
Or Or you can stalk them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, little bits of paper get lost, and yeah. So the business card. I'm not pro the business card, and I'm more with
It's not a
you.
hill to die on.
But it's a calling card, right?
Yeah.
And it does actually remind people. But my point really is about whether you had an alternative to it.
Yeah,
Would
so
you have?
where I've the whole book is around solutions. So
Okay.
my first book was more about like what are the problems and why. Whereas this is very much like this is a swap you can make, this is something that you can do instead.
Right.
So
I think that's a lot of the conversation around, not tonight necessarily, but there is a lack of solutions, and it's very hard to say, look, we should be doing this, but you still need it and you still want it, and you still there's still a market for it.
and then there are some problems like that there isn't a solution for yet, which is really even more frustrating.
Yeah, it's fine. When people don't know what the solutions are.
Solutions to an issue.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a Kindle book, yes?
Yeah, and an audio book. Yeah.
Is there an audio book?
There's an audio book.
I know, I'm listening to go to sleep.
If you haven't heard me talk enough, I can listen to it going to sleep. Yeah. On Audible.
Yeah, so with the book, obviously, it's a hard copy and it's paid for.
Yeah.
But what about like getting that information to people who don't have budget to buy books?
In the library. You
Okay,
can order
so
it
they
from
are
any
okay.
library. You can go into any
Yeah,
library and order it.
And what about like in schools and things? Because actually, it's quite a nice thing for school libraries to have. I don't know if it's going to be distributed that
So
way.
I'd love it to be in school libraries. It's something we've definitely discussed with the publisher. There's actually one of the big hair tech companies is talking about putting it in all of the salons that they have.
Like their products in, so that it's you can have it there and read it while you're getting your hair done and things like that. So I'd love to see it. I'm all up for sharing copies and things like that.
You know, the Moon Lane and the children's bookshop.
Yeah.
They actually do organise like all the library content for loads of local
nice.
and some national libraries as well. So for all the schools, it might be worth talking to them because they choose what goes in each bundle.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I'll pop in and
Might
have
just
a
be a really
chat
good
to
way
them.
because I think the schools have budget for it. But it just means that they select things that's going to be relevant and up to date
Yeah,
for the kids to read.
That's a really good idea. Thank you. I'll go and have a look. That'd be awesome. Yes, I mean, I don't want to. I know we're in a bookshop and I'd love to find
No,
it.
but
If you can't
yeah,
afford to
they're
buy
really
copies, then the
good.
library is.
Yeah,
no, 100%.
But it's specific like for kids as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've written. It's not all about families. Like I say, it's for everybody, but there's definite stuff in there that.
But I think it's really
family-oriented.
easy for probably younger people to consume as well. The way that you've laid it out and things, I think it's really good.
That's it. It's as colourful and as bitty as
I think there's lots of things in there you could pull out and do at schools and teach
Yeah.
at schools quite easily. Things that are very relevant.
Yeah,
to
there's
them.
quite a lot of crafty kind
Business
of stuff.
cards, not so much. But
Well, you might have to think of it as a set work.
Yeah.
It's far more important in this current world and contemporary environment than an inspector calls by Jay Priestley, which gets wrapped out every
Maybe
year.
that's it. It's on the
So,
syllabus.
through the things
You
It's this
pass
year's
when you've
book.
done everything in the book.
Yeah. Or as a science.
I wish people would teach this stuff at school a lot
So
more.
do I.
No,
It's
you
so
could-
much more
you should-
useful. I might actually know how to sew on a button if they have.
But it should be parenting, education, and politics. Politics is actually very, very important. And that's politics with a small p and a big P.
Yeah.
As indicated
Yeah.
by these guys here. They are attacking our political institution because our political institution has no interest in this whatsoever. Has a inserted interest in power and nothing to do with saving the planet.
I would agree.
I think the hard thing with trying to save the planet is that it's so intangible. There's no, there's nothing really that's going to make a huge direct thing in our lifetimes. It's all,
Yeah. And we
This is why it doesn't work on a political level, because people are trying to stay in power and not trying to, not thinking 200 years down the line or 100 years down the line.
No,
We
we
have
actually,
Unfortunately, 20 years down
change
the line.
out the ballot box. If people get more interested in politics, then they will change it. Well, that's how it has to happen.
and also we don't think generationally anymore. Whether in business or in building projects or in legacy terms, we think. Just making his own coffee.
Sorry?
Yeah, we think in 4 or 5 year cycles. We don't think about building a building that's going to take 50 years and stay up for 600. It's our event horizons have shifted. Our attention spans have shortened. So I think there is a difficulty getting people to think that far into the future, which I'm not quite sure what we do about.
It's a cultural change. It's a fashion thing. And the power of one has always been a really important thing, because if just one person does one thing, you feel it must make a difference, but it just then has to multiply. So if 1 million people just do one thing, that's 1 million things. And I really, really believe in that. And I've seen it in action in my life in various ways, completely unexpected ways. Like one person does one thing, and it can really affect some change. So in some ways, I haven't read it yet. Sorry, George, I haven't bought it yet.
Only
We
came out a
talked
week
about
ago.
it. Yeah, this book is almost like, actually, I'm thinking it's a bit of a power of one. You can't change this, you can't change the government, you can't bring down this, and you can't, but you can actually just do one person, one thing. And actually, if lots and lots of people do that thing, then actually you get a collective
And
change.
going back to
And fashion does lead that. It will lead change behaviour.
I mean, going back to the sort of the MP
MP thing, the politics thing, you know, writing a letter to an MP can feel like a really lonely, pointless thing. But if everybody in this room wrote the same letter or on the same thing, you know,
isn't it? They're like, oh, hang on, I've got 50 people moaning about water, and I've got another 50 people moaning about, you know, plastic, and it does take time. It does build.
I feel it has to be. Yeah, I must say, I personally feel it has to be a combination of both.
Absolutely, yeah.
I
It's
think
not all one.
Yeah, I think we've got to do our
direction.
bits, and then also, as you mentioned earlier, you know, it might not be that we're getting really loud about every single part of what needs to change, right, to save the planet, but you might be particularly concerned with water pollution, or there might be a particular aspect that you want to lobby the government on. I feel like we need combination.
I think some people might not, you know, also on a slightly different level, some people might not feel comfortable being part of Extinction Rebellion, but they might feel comfortable writing a letter.
Yeah.
And it needs both of those things.
Yeah.
It needs someone to kick off fuss and to make the headlines and to kind of, you know, bring this to the, you know, unfortunately, people take the brunt of it, but, you know, it's important that everyone does their bit on what they feel comfortable with doing.
Well, there's one of the tasks in the book is about how can you help like an existing local charity or environmental charity or something, and it's talking about like that doesn't always mean being front and center or setting something up, but everyone has different skills. So what skills do you have that could help? Could you do fundraising? Could you make tea for people that are building a garden? Could you help them with their finances? Like, we need everyone playing to their strengths in every role rather than us all doing the same thing. So yeah, I think hopefully there's ways, you know, taking action is it can be tiny and it can be invisible, or it can be at home, or it can be in your garden. It doesn't have to all be the same.
I like it. Okay, I think I'm gonna like hit end there, guys. So I feel like everyone's had to sit for quite a while.
Thank you.
But hopefully that was of some interest, and I hope we were able to cover a few different aspects and take everybody's kind of thoughts on board. But everybody's welcome to stay and chat. There's more wine if you want it. Yeah, sweet.